What's up, guys? This is Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the broader markets. I'm going to break down some big news that's coming out that could be affecting the way Tesla is going to be moving, and what you should be watching for as time goes on. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link that's down below, or sign up with my QR code that's right over here. Moomoo is an amazing global brokerage that has new exclusive offers. If you sign up and deposit $100, you're going to get $20 of free Nvidia stock. If you deposit $2,000, you're going to get $50 worth of Nvidia. Deposit $10,000 to get $300 worth, and deposit $50,000 to get $1,000 of free Nvidia stock. You also qualify for an 8.1% APY on invested cash. That includes a 4.1% APY base rate plus a 4% APY for an extra 3 months. And this offer ends very soon. So please check out my links down below to get those free NVIDIA stocks, and also just sign up with my QR code if you guys are interested. With that being said, now let's talk about what's happening with this market. So I just wanted to mention that right now, Tesla's just going back and forth between supply and demand. We're just bouncing off these levels. And if Tesla can see buyers defend around this 302 area, I think we push to at least 315. This could be a nice size bounce on Tesla if the whole market tries to bounce. But if we lose 300, we're looking for a bigger dump. If we break past 330, that's going to be a lot more bullish. Otherwise, we're still stuck in the middle. Now, if we get some really, really bad news for Tesla and we can't hold that 300 support, there's going to be a risk of us returning to 295 to 290 for a very, very healthy decline. And there's a very, very good chance that can happen eventually if we get more bad news. Now, if the market as a whole tries to bounce, if we get some good news and the market does try to rebound a bit and try to kind of like recover after so much downside last week, there could be a temporary bounce before potentially dipping lower. And that could also help Tesla get dragged up to some extent. So I'm just going to talk about the market really briefly in this video. Then I'll break down the charts in more detail. Tomorrow is going to be Monday, August 4th, 2025. At 10 a.m., we have very minor factories data. Then we have more data for our bill auctions at 11:30 a.m. for the 3 and 6 month. That could cause more volatility, so watch for that. Also, when it comes to earnings, we have Berkshire Hathaway on Monday, and then Palantir/HIMSS on Monday after market close. On Tuesday, we have Pfizer, AMD, and Supermicro announcing their earnings. On Wednesday, we have Uber and Shopify, and then Thursday and Friday are going to be very, very quiet. Also, on Wednesday, we have Disney announcing earnings. So Monday through Wednesday are going to be very important, and Thursday and Friday are going to be a lot more quiet. On top of this, when it comes to the VIX, right now things are neutral. Momentum is at fear right now, and then the put to call option ratio is at fear. That's making up the majority of sentiment. The VIX is also trying to push higher. We're at neutral, so we're going to see how this goes as we're trying to break past our 50 daily moving average. So give this the time it needs. President Trump also said some very important things. Keep in mind that he wants to delay his tariffs until August 7th. So that's some news that could affect the markets because now the tariffs won't be imposed until August 7th. And he did want to adjust some of the levels, at least to an extent. Keep in mind, he's giving Mexico 90 days to make a deal. He's also giving China some more time because he believes that those are some of the most important trading allies, and they're trying to prioritize deals with those countries. And then these are the rates we're looking for. They're ranging from 15% for some countries. Others have 30%. Some have 25%. Others have 40%. So keep that in mind. For Brazil, for example, they have a 10% base tariff rate plus a 40% penalty due to some factors. So in my opinion, there's going to be a lot of tariffs coming out by August 7th, but because President Trump delayed this, it may help the market to some extent. Now, I'm not going to go over the full details. As far as Tesla goes, I'm not really seeing any major news. The European sales went down. We went over the news that Tesla has to once again, there was a big court case. I did go over those details. Not going to go over all the details right now. I just want to say that, we're in a consolidation and we need to see Tesla basically hold 302. If we hold this could try to bounce for 315. But if we can't hold that 300 to 302 area, there's going to be a risk of Tesla continuing to decline. And we're looking for basically a breakdown towards the 290s. Now, when you look at the daily time frame, a lot of stocks look like they could try to bounce a little bit, and that could greatly benefit Tesla. For example, Bitcoin right now is bouncing, and if Tesla could hold this white trend line down here, there's a good chance it might try to rebound. Now, the weekly time frame on Tesla's looking weak, but we haven't lost 300. This is going to be a pivotal support for us. I do think that we're going to see further declines. So my prediction is that Tesla will be dipping more. But before we see a further decline, this might bounce a little bit first. I hope that's as clear as possible. So what I mean by that is this. We're in a consolidation, right? Like this, we're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I think that we might try to bounce. We might try to see a small bounce where this trend line is acting as support, taking us up towards that 315 or so area. Then I think we're going to get very, very tight. And if we get a really good piece of news, Tesla could launch higher. But if we don't get good news, keep in mind that earnings weren't the best for Tesla. The European sales are not as great. And even the news that Tesla has expanded the robotaxi to the Bay Area was not really enough to get the share price to bounce hard, which goes to show how weak Tesla's looking relative to the markets, which is why the odds would favor more downside, especially if SPY and the QQQ start to sell off. I did make a video about that yesterday, about how if the whole market starts selling off more due to the tariffs or more economic fears about inflation, that could also drag Tesla down. And I do think we're going to see a move like this. I favor that for now unless we break some key levels. So I'm saying we might bounce a little bit, consolidate, and eventually there might be some more downside if we get some negative news. Simultaneously, there are a lot of gaps unfilled on Tesla. There's a gap down here, for example, at 259. We have a big one down here in like the 230s. So this might be a very healthy pullback and another potential buying opportunity coming to Tesla. I think it's going to be very exciting in case we do get a big dip. And looking at this consolidation, we could go either way. But obviously, being more bearish makes a little bit more sense. So once again, we're in a consolidation and we're bouncing off this bottom support here. So the odds do favor us trying to bounce temporarily for a test of 315 and then some consolidation. And then maybe later on Tesla dips. We'll have to see how that goes, but keep that in mind. That's going to be very, very key for how we end up moving. Now, on the weekly time frame, like I said before, we're still very, very weak. So I presume that we might bounce a little bit on like Monday, Tuesday, then maybe later on during the week with the tariffs coming out or whatever news comes out, that could still cause Tesla to drag lower. So please keep that in mind. For SPY in the markets, we're also looking very weak on the weekly time frame. So I do expect more downside. But before that happens, what you'll see when you zoom in is that we have a critical support right here on SPY. And this could also greatly benefit Tesla. So right here, right, notice that we had this chop zone. SPY loves to bounce at least a little bit, just a little bit, near these green lines right here. See these green lines? Right here, these green supports. This is where SPY likes to bounce between 620 and 618. We bounced, rejected, bounced, rejected, bounced. So we're at that support right here. This is where the support is. We're still holding 618. Now, if there's a catastrophic piece of news and we lose 618, then yes, we could be dumping all the way down to like 612, right? 612 could be coming. That's very, very possible in case we get a big rejection. If we are bullish, however, you want to see us basically get back and hold above 618, and then that could take us back up to 626 or so for some kind of push attempt. We may even attempt to fill that gap before potentially continuing to decline. I do like this more because this kind of resembles like a head and shoulders, a left shoulder, head and right shoulder on the SPY daily chart. And then we have that big support at 618. So my guts tells me that at that 618 zone, we could bounce and try to retest 626 to 630. And then we might consolidate like this. We need to hold 626 to push more, but if we lose 618, we're looking for a dump. And my gut tells me that this may be resembling a head and shoulders. So there might be some kind of temporary bounce here. You should be kind of like favoring that if we hold 618. And we might be pushing back up to like 626 to 630, and then we'll see if we reject or not. So give this the time it needs. On the 4-hour time frame, we're on a downtrend, as you guys could tell, but notice we have this key support between 618 to 620, and we'll see how it goes. It's going to be very, very interesting. So be prepared for a little bit of downside. We'll see if we could base at 618. If we hold 618, it's going to be a good sign. We could be looking for a temporary bounce. And then we're going to see if we reject more. If 618 does not hold tomorrow, I expect more downside for 612. So please keep those levels in mind. Okay. But I am looking for a move like this, basically a temporary bounce move before potentially dipping. I think that's the most likely possibility on SPY. And then for Tesla, same thing, basically. We are declining, but we're at this support still. We have not lost 300. And hopefully we see Tesla try to get one more bounce here. If we can't hold 300, it's going to be a bad sign. And then this may be declining a lot more. So watch and see if we could continue to maintain this wedge. And whichever way we break is going to determine a much bigger move on Tesla. I talk about SPY and the QQQ because they could also affect Tesla. If the whole market sees a temporary bounce, we could see Tesla do something very similar. Now, for the QQQ, okay, this is looking bearish, but when you look at it like this, notice that we have this support at the 550 to 552 range. So like right here, we're at 550 bounce, 552 bounce, dip to 550 bounce, dip to 550 bounce. We're just kind of like going back and forth. Now, what could be happening is that we might be dipping back down towards the 550 area. If this doesn't hold, it's not going to be a good sign. We're still going to likely consolidate like this. And then we could be declining even lower as time goes on. So please keep that in mind for the time being. We also have kind of like a head and shoulders, like a left shoulder, a head and then a right shoulder. That could also drag us lower in case this ends up panning out. And if we lose 550, we're looking for a bigger decline on the QQQ. So what I do want to mention is that we love to bounce off 550, then test 557. There's a chance we might be doing that again before we continue to decline. So watch 550. If we don't hold 550, it's going to be bearish. If we do hold it, I'm hoping we hold 550. Then I'm looking for an attempt to basically bounce back up to like 558 to 560. Then we'll see some consolidation before potentially declining even more off a head and shoulders. So watch this very closely. We have this head and shoulders like pattern, and then we'll see how it ends up going. I do think that 550 might be acting as a base, and we'll see if we bounce here, and then we're going to see what happens as we just continue to trade sideways. So watch and see if we could get the QQQ to bounce a bit. Hopefully we get some good earnings and such. We might kind of like consolidate before continuing to dump. Hopefully we see buyers defend 550 though. If not, be prepared for more downside. But this is the move I'm looking for, a small bounce. On the IWM is the same thing, because when you go to the daily time frame, although we're weak here, we are forming a wick. We dump so much on the QQQ and IWM. I want to see this get back above 216. If we do, we're looking for this gap fill to like 220. Then we'll see if we reject. Look and see if we could retest 216. If that breaks, we're looking for 220. Then we could reject. But if we lose 212, we're looking for a bigger decline. So see if we get some kind of temporary bounce or not. On ES, we're looking bearish, but it depends. There's going to be some kind of rebound, most likely, either off 6250, we test 6250 and bounce, or we go a little lower to like 6200 flats and then we bounce. I think it's going to be one of those two. So 6200 to 6250, that range is where we're going to likely bounce from for a temporary move back up towards the 6300s. And then we could be looking for a further decline lower. That could take us into this head and shoulders like phase, a left shoulder, head and then right shoulder. So please keep that in mind, especially as time goes on. And by the way, guys, I apologize if there's some background noise. I'm actually staying in a different place right now. Anyways, so for ES, there's also kind of like a head and shoulders like pattern. Same thing developing right here on NQ. We have support at 22,750. So hopefully we see some buyers try to defend at 22,750. If not, 22,500 in that range. We could try to bounce to about the 23,000s, consolidate, and then we could be dumping all the way down to the lower 22,000s if we get a rejection. Now notice that Bitcoin's bouncing right now. That could be a good sign for tomorrow for the markets. We could retest 115 to 116,000 temporarily, but then Bitcoin could reject and start dumping as time goes on like that. So keep that in mind. There might be a temporary bounce. I am leaning more bearish on Tesla for the shorter term because of this wedge, but there might be a temporary bounce, a short-term bounce to 315 one more time before this continues to decline. So keep that in mind. For the rest of these, we have other stocks such as Nvda. Nvda has support right here around this daily time frame at this 169 area. We're going to see if we bounce off this to retest 178. If so, we could reject like that. So keep that in mind. For Aapl, Apple's rejecting. We got a double top rejection here. We could continue to decline to basically the low 200s, but notice that there's a chop zone between 200 and 204. We could test 200, bounce to 204, come back down and consolidate before it continues to decline. That's what I think is likely going to come. Netflix is looking bearish. We need to get back above 1180 to bounce more. I think we could be declining to about 1140, and we'll see if buyers defend. For MSTR, we're also looking a bit more bearish. As you could tell, we're just continuing to decline. It might be retesting the support right here around that 360 area, and we're going to see if buyers defend. So look for a little bit more downside for 360, a temporary bounce to the 375 area before further declines for more downside. For Celsius, we have support right here where this trend line happens to be. We're going to see if we bounce back up to 46 and if we reject or not, so give that the time it needs. Supermicro has this gap to fill above, so it depends on earnings. Hopefully we bounce a bit approaching earnings to like 59. Then we'll see if earnings launches this up or down. It depends on earnings, so keep that in mind. For Palantir, it depends on earnings. We could retest 151, then bounce and kind of consolidate between 151 and 159. Then we'll see if we break up or down depending on earnings. ARM, or not ARM, Rivian is dipping right now. We're going to be looking for a move back down to 12. It looks pretty weak to me. SoFi has been stuck between 20 and 24 for a couple of weeks, so I think we're going to likely range trade. Look for a test of 22, dip, and just more consolidation. AMD is looking a little bit stronger. This could be attempting to push for essentially 176, and we'll see if we break out higher. If not, we could reject. So give that the time it needs. I do think 178 could be tested. ARM is the one that's looking kind of weak here, but it needs to base at 134. If 134 holds, we're looking for an attempt to push the low 140s before potentially declining more. PayPal is dipping here. We're going to see if we could hold 66. If not, we're going to likely consolidate and start dipping back down to 65. Coinbase needs to hold around 300 or else it could be dipping more. There's a gap to fill over here, so we'll look for 307. For Amazon, there's a gap over here. It's going to be dipping to 209 most likely, so I do see some more downside coming, and we'll see if we bounce. For Meta, we might be dipping a little bit more. We could be looking for a test of basically 740. Google might be retesting basically 192 before continuing to dump. And then Microsoft looks bearish to me. I think it's going to continue to fill this gap. Might try to retest the low 530s, and then I do think it's going to likely come down to fill that gap as time goes on. As far as the VIX goes, just real quick, the VIX has a very tough resistance around 22, so we have gotten lots of rejections here. This makes me suspect it could come down a little bit. Maybe the market bounces just a bit before this continues to break out. So there might be a small bounce coming to the markets before further declines. The dollar is also rejecting now. That could be another good sign for the markets. And then the 10 years also dipping. That could also be positive. So not saying I'm a full-on bear or bull. I think that, it's best to read the chart and follow the trend on a daily basis. But SPY and the QQQ are at some big supports, and they have bounced here many times historically. That could help Tesla bounce to some extent. I'd like to see Tesla bounce. We need to hold the support, so hopefully we get a temporary bounce, but I'm saying temporary, right? We might retest 315, consolidate, and then eventually there's going to likely be more of a decline. Unless we fail at 300 now and just start declining for the low 290s. Now we'll see which way we end up going. But anyways, I thank you all so much for listening. So please have an awesome rest of your guys' days. Enjoy your Sunday or weekend, wherever you guys are around the world. Enjoy your day, night, or evening. I'll be back tomorrow morning with another update. Until then, I wish you all nothing but the best. Tesla to the moon, because the long term is still very bright despite this short-term volatility and even some short-term downside we could get for like a month or so. It's very possible. But I'm still a big bull for the long term, at least nonetheless. And I believe the future is still very bright. Thank you for listening, and peace out.